starting now. Hello, people. Okay. So I'm gonna just say it how it is. Ken Wald is Hollywood. You can fight me.
True.
Ken Wald is Hollywood. High ground, high ground, high ground that gives you control of the low ground. That's super important. First point enables dive in certain ways with various different high grounds looking down at the point. It's a little bit harder on first point to run dive. Like Hollywood's a little bit more dive centric than first point Eichenwald is. But then third point, you get into third point brawl central. You need to brawl it out all the way along this. There's little flank routes, sure, you can take for these different things. For anybody who hasn't had a detailed look at Hollywood, there's a mega back here. Defending, you can kind of post a widow or a soldier up here, and that can get a lot of value once the cart has turned the corner. But on attack, it's just going to be the same thing as Hollywood pretty much, where it's going to be dive centric for the second point, and brawl heavy on the third point, with the first point being kind of, optional on which you could do, but maybe leaning, a little bit more towards dive. So this choke can be useful to hold if you're running Rhine's Aria, but generally the thing we want to focus on the most Eichenwald defense is our rotations backing up, right? This is going to be really important kind of going forward. So I think that the best way to do this is to have... it depends. It largely does depend on our DPS, but I'm going to say that we have a Rhine's Aria kind of a choke area. It's probably better to have a Rhine Diva if we can, because then this bridge is going to become very important for us to be able to contest over time if we want to hold the choke. But you put your tanks up at the choke, and then you drop your supports way back to this. They can play car, this rotten car. They can play this left side pillar. Far is really good on this map because it's pillar, because it's a vertical cover that she can kind of shoot down from over here. And maybe get a few cheeky shots over here. I think the skybox lets her go all the way up there. But yeah, your DPS and supports can play from this kind of back area, and then maybe if you have a Reaper or something like that, he could play up here and he can contest the high ground for you. But the main thing is that when the tanks start to get low, they don't die on the hill that is this choke point, because this choke point actually isn't super important because there's so much space between the choke and point. So we want to be allowing ourselves to give this up, because more often than not, we're going to have DPS who can poke them down as we're retreating, as long as we're giving them the space that they demand, right? So tanks, you want to start backing up towards the rotten car, towards the moldy car, and then turning this corner. And what this will allow the rest of us to do is it'll allow your supports to drop back and make the rotations. A lot of supports in DPS are going to want to claim this high ground in particular. This is going to be a really good high ground to try to control. This one's a little bit harder to access. I'm not too worried about it. It's kind of more attacker friendly. Like once you clear choke, that this high ground becomes more attacker friendly. So this is one of those things in the game where it's like, these are the things you have to be aware of, right? Where, hold on, click on the thing, click off of it. No, stop it. Get down. Stop, please. Alright, lower. Alt tab to this. Lower. You ever just hate? Okay, so once the enemies kind of clear this choke point, they almost immediately get everything up to this area, because there's nothing here for your tanks to hold. So as soon as they clear this hold spot, they get all of this space. By claiming this space, they claim the stairs. By claiming the stairs, they can claim this entire hallway and this entire high ground. Whether they use it or not is completely up to them. Let me make that a little bit prettier. So once they clear this choke, they control all this space, and then they begin, they have access to this freely, which we can't contest as easily, because in order to get to the staircase, we would have to push into their territory. So we can't contest this unless we have people with mobility that's vertical, such as like Genji, Hanzo, Pharah, Echo, etc., who can, push from our side of the map onto the high ground. But essentially, this high ground isn't easily contestable, which means as attackers, and again, this is something that you can learn, is once you clear the space, you get control of this, and if you control this high ground, then you control basically this immediate area underneath and can disconnect the enemies from their respawners, because it'll be much harder for them to kind of like get back to the fight, because they have to push right underneath you. Now, the main problem is that this sightline is not completely safe if the enemies have taken the other high ground that I was showing you, which is one of the reasons why that other high grounds can be so important sometimes, because this high ground is going to allow this general area, this high ground right here, is going to allow this general area up on this top left-hand side to become a contested space, not a freely taken space, right? So like you can shoot back at an even sight line with neither of you having a particular advantage over another. It's just pretty much a straight DPS duel. Welcome back, Frosty. So it's going to be important to, as attackers, to probably take this high ground if we're running something that can, deal decent damage at a medium to close range. So McCree, Hanzo, Junkrat, things like that, who want to look down at this short, maybe 15 to 20 meter distance and just poke away at point. Not going to be as great for maybe an Ashe or a Widow because they prefer maybe a little bit more space than this offers, but you can get it to work because it is still a high ground. And it is still an advantage point where you get good sight lines and have clear space to work with. So the main thing, like I said, is going to be those rotations, dropping back as tanks, making sure that the supports are dropping back accordingly behind you. There's going to be a lot of times where the supports are going to actually break line of sight with the tanks because the tanks don't ever want to drop back to the point where they are on top of the supports. Because then at that point, the supports positioning is foregone and they are as good as dead against good teams. So this drop back is going to be very important. Supports dropping back beforehand, making sure that they're leading their shots as Ana. You want to get those projectiles so you can hit them as they're hitting the corner. Maybe you stay at a medium range as Mercy and kind of pocket them around the corner for those 3 seconds that you're allowed to connect your beam without line of sight. And then you make the rotation up to the high grounds where one of your supports makes the rotation. Let's say we're playing Ana Mercy. One of your supports, the Ana, would make this rotation up to the high grounds so that she could have this space, and then the Mercy would just GA up to her or, continue to juggle around as she sees fit. But this first point high ground, I think, is going to be very particular when it comes to that defensive rotation backwards. Because there's also going to be a lot of times that the enemies don't push straight into you. There's going to be a lot of times where they just push to this left side. It's going to be their left. And you actually have to mirror them by then holding this space and seeing if you can make it to contest them at this broken tank. We're going to call this a tank. It's not a tank, but we're going to call it a tank. So that mirror, that drop back is going to be super duper important on this first point here. And making sure that you're communicating and doing that properly is going to be fairly pivotal to your ability to stabilize your composition and not give the enemy easy opportunities to pick you off. So first point, you have a corner here. You got plenty of high ground. Jump up and down contesting cart if you're playing Monkey. If you're playing Reinhardt, you want to wait till the cart is in specific areas for you to contest it. You don't want to be walking out there. And this is a message to the whole team, right? Because there's a lot of times where somebody will call like, oh, we have to contest cart, we have to go. But you don't have to always instantly contest cart. There's going to be places that are definitively good and bad to contest cart. For instance, under this bridge for Reinhardt is definitively good to hold cart, and you are more likely to get a hold here than if you held it 15 feet forward, which means you should just give them that 15 feet for the higher percentage chance of actually getting the hold. Your other chances are going to be this corner. For some particular reason, this corner becomes a little bit hard for people to push around, I think because the open sight lines, but I'm assuming against good teams this isn't going to be an issue. I don't think we're ever going to properly hold at a corner like this because you're in the middle of fucking nowhere. And your DPS can kind of be staged way back here maybe, and that will give them an easy fight, but your tanks are going to be pretty much on their own. Okay. So the last one is always going to be before this kind of chokish area, or not before this chokish area here, but it's going to become a choke. Before the end of the checkpoint, you're going to obviously brawl here. The important thing is going to be to come out from the defender side on the right, because you're going to have this mega, you're going to have this safety area. This is going to be very similar to how I talk about King's Row third, where when you're looking at it from the defender side, that right side has the boxes and the mini, and that is the small advantage that you want to take into account when you're looking at trying to recontest. Sure, there's this mini over here that you might be able to use, but what are you really walking out to right here to be able to utilize for defensive positioning? Not much, to be fair. So you're going to want to be coming out of this side, using this geometry here to protect yourself. So, like I said, third point, brawl. Shrug. There's going to be a similar thing here, like I said, on King's Row, where if somebody gets split spawned, I mean, it's not as easy to catch them because this corner is a lot quicker to turn. But there's going to be, people who are supposed to respawn around here, and then they have to run out. You might be able to catch them if you're aggressive. This thing, I actually counted it the other day. It takes, I'm pretty sure, 4 knocks. I was counting it and then I probably forgot about it. So it takes 3 or 4 knocks before it actually opens. So you have a good 5 or 6 seconds before the card is even movable. for you to just like push for free, because it's not like you're going to be able to push card. So like if you're playing from the attacker side, I mean, controlling high ground, of course, for attackers very important. Get sight lines onto the thing, but then once you can control that point, once you have it claimed, push around, get those picks, clean up, try to make sure you get anybody who's staggered out. Questions, comments, concerns, ideas on Eichenwald so far? Cool. Yep, okay. You like to wait till I say cool?
I forgot. My train of thought is gone. It'll come back to me.
Okay, cool. So, like I said, for this last point, this high ground can be useful. It's a great flank angle for once the card is underneath. If you're coming back, especially as like a soldier with tack or something like that, you fucking sprint around here and pop the tack from over here. I mean, most of the support line is probably going to be playing from this space up here, but you still get clear line of sight on everybody. The tanks are going to be underneath you if they're pushing card, and it's going to make it really easy for them to stop you from punishing the people who are a little bit further distance-wise from them, and will open up space for your tanks to push forward, because their tanks will have to react to you as a DPS, making space for your team. This high ground up here could be useful. Don't forget, there's this mini here. So for anybody who doesn't know, like Frosty, you're fairly new to the game. There's this mini up here that you can access for quick and easy Sombra hacks and translocates. This is also a great staging ground for EMPs as well. It's very passive. This is very like you in terms of like where you would want to play Sombra. This is a very you type position where you would translocate back up here. You don't even have to go invisible. You just fucking jump back into the fight by shooting from up here and like hacking, and then jump up here with your EMP and stuff like that. Did it come back to you, Tat?
No.
Okay. So we'll see if it comes back in one of the other maps, but I'm going to stop this.